Hi, and welcome back to the Card Pool. I'm Crazy Haired Stu.
And I am not so crazy haired Kyle.
And today we are looking at Prophecy. This is our third part of the set. We are looking at the money cards. These are the 10 that we were not allowed to pick in the Hidden Gems section.
Yeah, and maybe these will actually be, good. Well, we'll
We
see.
had a handful that were pretty awesome. So if you want to check those out from the beginning, we'll go ahead. We'll put a little blip here. You can go back and check on those first if you're interested. But jumping right in on to number one, it's pretty much the poster child for this set.
Yeah, it's got to be like one of the best cards in Magic in general, and definitely this set.
So number one is a card called Ristic Study. Now this is a 3-drop enchantment if you haven't seen it yet before. It costs 2 generic and an island, and it reads whenever an opponent plays a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays an additional 1. So this is the constant card where you always have the annoying things like, are you going to pay that extra 1? And you're like, no, unless the whole table's actively paying that mana so that player doesn't get any added draw to them.
And this was horribly annoying up until they pristed Smothering Tithe last year. And I'm not sure which is worse, honestly, because they're both pretty bad.
Well, the funniest part is like, all right, the player who doesn't have Ristic plays Smothering Tithe, and they just look back at it and be like, thanks.
Yeah, it pretty much balances each other out, really, when you think about it.
Well, because the person with the Smothering Tithe will get all this mana. They can afford to cost on the Ristic Study, and if they don't, they get more mana to play more stuff that they want, which is great. But either way, we're not talking about this. This is a great poster child for card advantage. It is blue at its core. It makes players use their mana, so this is really for like a death and taxes kind of scenario.
Well, I really think it's for almost any deck that uses blue. Like, time has proven that this is probably like one of the better cards, well, the best card in this set by far, but one of the better cards in Magic in general. It is a staple in Commander, and for reasons that I will never understand. Something that usually gets ignored for entire games.
Yeah.
Like, come on now. How can you do this?
For just a common, this is great. And honestly, yeah, this is, if anything were to ever tell you why it's important to go back and look for hidden gems, this card is a great one for this, because how long was this under $1?
Yeah.
Years.
It was one of those sleepers that until a lot of people started playing Commander, I don't think anyone like really noticed. And then it just kind of spiked and it's never come down.
So this one's been around at $18 now, again, when we took the current price tag. But again, if you want your copy, it'll be about that. So
significantly down from where it used to be, too. So
yeah,
worth noting.
Number 2, Kyle.
All right, number 2 here for $13, so stepping a little bit down the ladder, is another blue card, an enchantment, too, Overburden. Now, this is actually a rare, and for good reason. It costs 2 mana to play. And what says, whenever a player puts a creature card into play, that player returns a land they control to its owner's hand.
Constant strife between green and blue right there. This is a card that really emphasizes on that.
So yeah, this is also pretty, in a different way. This is much more obviously oppressive than Ristic Study is, but it totally leans into blue's suite of punishing control effects, and it seriously slows down any kind of aggressive strategy whatsoever. However, should be noted that doesn't work on tokens.
Good. That actually makes it even better for that. Well, and this is great for blue because, like, how much do they care about casting spells and not really creatures?
Yeah.
Is it decks that storm off? Yeah, like those. Yeah, pretty much all the time, unless you're doing Merfolk Tribal or Wizard Tribal. This pretty much hurts all other creature-based decks where they don't want to get hurt. And it's either I'm playing a creature or I'm losing a land drop. Now, decks that use landfall triggers might not be hurt as much with this, but again, it's still going to hurt. And no one wants, this is going against the grain of whatever meta you're in.
Exactly. And for something that comes out on turn 2, ouch. Like,
Dream plays turn 2.
That's going to be so not fun for anyone.
And that card's about roughly $13.
Yeah.
So if you are feeling to have that oppression in your deck, by all means, you can buy it.
Yeah, please don't, though. Don't play against me. Anyway, there are some things even I don't think are fun. But anyway, let's go on to our next number, Sue.
All right, at number 3, we're looking at a card called Haldun Fire. Now, this is about a $4 card. It is a creature that costs 5 mana, 3 generic and double red for, I'm guessing, a human soldier at this point, with a 3/3 body. And it reads, when this creature comes into play, each player sacrifices all lands he or she controls except for 3 of them.
Yikes.
Very red Armageddon kind of stuff at the core.
Not quite as bad as an Armageddon, but it's close.
Yeah, this is, again, anti-lands kind of was a little bit of the thing. Now, most players in Commander, for forget that red is all about land destruction because it's something that's kind of frowned upon. This isn't as frowned upon depending on when it comes out, but it hurts everyone evenly, and that's going to really hurt.
Well, at that point, it depends on really who has the best board state, because then they're probably going to win.
Yeah.
This is even, I mean, you could argue in some ways this is easier to abuse than Armageddon, because it's much more easy to recur, since it's a creature. However, I will note that doubling or activating its ETB effect multiple times essentially does nothing, because it always ends up with 3 lands.
It keeps the board at a constant state of, like, it's not going to grow. If you use a lot of mana rocks, this is a great way for you to go ahead and get around this, which, again, red does not mind using artifacts. There are a lot of artifact synergies with this. So, and even with the new chromatic orrery that we see, you can go ahead and make it so that those rocks can go ahead and produce red mana. So you might not get hurt with this as much. So you could use this in a deck. People would hate playing it, but you can use it in the deck. And it's not bad for $4, honestly. But moving on to the next card, Kyle.
Indeed. So going to another red card here at number 4 for $4 a copy. Again, we have Citadel of Pain. Now this is a 2 mana and 1 red, so 3 total cost card here. At the end of each player's turn, Citadel of Pain does X damage to that player, where X is the number of untapped lands they control. So once again, we're kind of adding to Red's arsenal of anti-control sort of cards by punishing people who don't play on their own turns. So essentially, if you're not tapping out to play stuff, which this is encouraging you to do, you're going to take damage for it. This sort of hurts a lot of decks for holding mana up for flash spells, counter spells, or what have you. So it's a good solid card in Red's arsenal to make sure everyone is playing the game on your own terms.
Well, you might be able to get around this a little bit too. Like a Seedborn Muse would go ahead and make it so like you're untapping on other players' turns, and you can go ahead and use that mana. You won't get hurt with it because it's not your turn. So it's not as amazing, I'd say, as something else where it's like on every player's turn this happens, and then that count would grow really quick. But also there's damage doublers out there which can go ahead and make this clock tick way faster. So this is a red at its core kind of card.
Yeah, but I think it's more of sideboard material because you're not really going to be playing this. I wouldn't think main deck. It all depends on who you're playing against, how good this is.
Yeah, you might want something like a War's Toll a little bit more or something else like that.
A little bit more versatile.
Yeah. Because, I mean, dealing damage, it might not mean much to you in the long run. But again, it could, who knows. But now let's go on to a little bit of a nuttier card. And by that, I mean squirrels. Now, number 5 here, we're looking at a card called Squirrel Wrangler. Now, it's around $2 for a 4-drop druid, probably human druid at that. It costs 2 generic and double green for a 2/2 body. And it has 2 separate effects. For a 1 green and a 1 colorless, you can go ahead and sack a land, and if you do, put 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens into play. And also, if you go ahead and you tap 1 colorless and a green, sacrifice a land, all squirrels get +1/1 until the end of the turn. So this is kind of a Hail Mary card that is in Squirrel Tribal. You go ahead, you pump out a huge field, you go ahead and you pump out and make it so that they're big squirrels, massive squirrels, scary squirrels, and you swing in for lethal damage.
Yeah, I actually, legitimately, I actually kind of love this card because it's actually really powerful.
Well, it can do stuff, sure.
Yeah, it's so good though. I mean, as long as it's in the right place. For example, in a deck that likes to, for example, Korvold or Mazarek, a deck that likes to both sacrifice things and produce tokens.
Okay.
There is an extreme amount of advantage here because not only are you getting a sacrifice trigger, but you're adding then 2 more bodies to the board to be sacrificed later on, and in some cases even make those bodies even bigger. So essentially, with a Mazarek deck with that commander in play, you're tapping 2 and sacrificing land to make 2 2/2 tokens for 2 mana. That's really pretty awesome, isn't it?
It works out like that. The only thing is the secondary effect kind of becomes a little useless then if you're not going Squirrel Tribal because all creatures don't get the boost.
Yeah, I actually, frankly, I could care less about the second ability. It's the first one that matters because that's where it's at. Like sacrificing lands to make tokens, depending on the situation, I am super okay with that.
I agree with you with that, and honestly, it's kind of a low cost to be able to keep using that over and over again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I actually, legitimately, I think this is a sleeper that a lot of people ignore that should not.
Well,
This is great.
And I'll give you the term sleeper on this because it is a $2 card. It's not like it's a $30 card in the money card where it's like sleeper.
I'm serious though, extremely underrated card.
Well, here's another card actually that people have usually seen but not really used in the game.
Yeah, this was one of my first ones too. You want me to go ahead then?
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right, well, number 6 here on our list, again, a $2 card, Avatar of Woe. Now, again, this is another one of the first cards I ever got. So it's a 6/5 for a whopping 8 mana, and it's an avatar creature. It says if there are 10 or more creatures total in all graveyards, Avatar of Woe costs 6 less to play. So in that case, it would only be 2. Avatar of Woe can't be blocked except by artifact creatures or black creatures.
So fear.
Right, and then it can tap to destroy target creature, and that creature can't be regenerated. Now, originally, when I first started playing Magic and was just getting into Commander as a format, I did play this card very often because I was like, oh my god, this thing is awesome. For 2 mana, it's huge body and it kills basically anything. Sure, I mean, as time has gone on, I've realized, yeah, this isn't really that powerful when compared to a lot of other stuff out there.
But old school Magic, where it's
it's pretty good.
You're like, oh my god, I brought it up for literally, you look at it and you're like, I know there's better, but I really would love the chances to cast this for 2 mana.
Right, and it actually is pretty easy to happen compared to a lot of other cards from this cycle. This is one of the easier ones to play for a very little cost.
If a person's using a very creature light deck, like a Hermit Druid deck where there isn't very many creatures in it,
yeah, well,
it won't go off.
Yeah, no, well, that's not true. If you're playing this card, you probably, and should be, unless you have no idea what you're doing, should be playing a deck that puts lots of creatures in the graveyard very quickly.
Yeah, but it's all players' grade. So if a player doesn't even have 10 creatures in their decks...
Yeah, but if you are a good player, you should not rely on what other people are doing. You should only rely on yourself. What other people are doing is just an added bonus.
I mean, sure, you can get there are ways, if they are using enough creatures, you can use stuff like as group mill, like a Mesmeric Orb or something like that. Like, that's all possible. Mm-hmm. I'm not discrediting that. And there's even ways you go ahead, you can cheat it out to the field with like a Living Death or something else like that. And honestly, being able to spot removal something that can't be regenerated. Now, some problem cards can be regenerated. We've seen them less and less, but it's one of those fantasy cards. You don't see everyone use it, but everyone knows it. And you say Avatar of Woe to somebody, they know what card you're talking about. It's not like it's like, oh, is this the one? No, I know this card.
That's pretty cool, but unfortunately, I think it's one of those that just doesn't look so good these days.
Well, actually, it looks pretty good because they made an invocation of it back in Amonkhet, I think, where they made it as a masterpiece. And it looked pretty cool, so it is looking pretty, but I mean, cost-wise, different. But moving on to our number 7 card. Now, this is a card called Plague Winds. It's about $1.50 for a sorcery that costs 9 mana. Jeez, 7 generic and double black, and it reads: destroy all creatures you don't control. They can't be regenerated. It's a very simple effect. Kind of been a little outclassed recently. Like, we see cards like in Garrick's Wake.
Yeah, which is this exact same thing, except it destroys all creatures and planeswalkers your opponents control. So it's just a strictly better upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, like, if this one was instant speed and in Garrick's Wake wasn't, be a little different.
Right, but it's not.
Yeah, so the fact that, again, that this is a money card is because there's a lot of not money cards in
this
set.
Is exactly a money card for $1.50. So, yeah, just goes to show.
But, yes, I mean, if you want to use it as an option of, like, a budget card, a discount card, go for it. But honestly, you could probably find something a little better.
I agree. And speaking of that, let's go on to our next card.
All right.
So number 8 here on our list for the whopping money card price of $1 is Ristic Tutor. Now, again, this is another one of the Ristic cards. So we've got a sorcery here that costs 3 mana to play. Unless any player pays 2 mana of any color, search your library for any card, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. So it's a tutor that pretty much anybody at the table can just invalidate by paying 2 mana. Like I said before, other than Ristic Study, I'm pretty convinced that almost all these Ristic cards are terrible. This one is especially terrible.
The enchantment I brought up in the Hidden Gems.
I said almost all.
Okay, I'll take that.
That's a good exception, but this one is just terrible. I'm sorry, it's really, really awful.
Now, all right, now this, I've actually seen players use this card, and people just didn't counter it because they're like, why should I be the one to pay the mana? Which is, again, it sounds stupid that would be the thing to hold it up, but it did, and it worked like that. So this is a budget version of a Grim Tutor, if you want to look at it that way.
Sure, I guess. Why would anybody ever not pay for those? Like, come on, it's only 2 mana.
But again, this also works in the way of being like, okay, I don't have an answer. This guy here, or girl, goes ahead and plays this, and they can go ahead and find an answer to a problem on the board. So I could be like, I won't pay it. I'm fine with it. I need you to get this. And like, if the player who is the threat is tapped out, and the other two are in agreement with this, it can go off. So it's not unheard of.
Or you could just play Diabolic Tutor for 1 more mana that just gets you whatever card you want, which is
lower
so
mana
much better.
cost is sometimes a better thing, and it comes at a cost usually. That's the cost.
I don't know. This is still pretty terrible if you ask me.
I'm not saying this is as good as something as a Demonic Tutor or a Vampiric Tutor or any of those. This is probably more on the lower end of that. However, it's still all right. In the words of Matthew McConaughey, it's all right, all right, all right.
It's really stretching the definition of all right.
If it got one more all right, it'd be up to good. I understand. But all right, moving on to number 9.
All right, so number 9 here, we've got Celestial Convergence, which is another enchantment, excuse me. It costs 3, well, not 3.
How many hiccups you got coming out of there?
Oh, man. 4 mana to play. Celestial Convergence comes into play with 7 Omen counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove an Omen counter from Celestial Convergence. If there are no Omen counters on it, the player with the highest life total wins the game. If 2 or more players are tied for the highest life total, the game is a draw.
So in short, it's a 7-countered enchantment that can end the game instantly with a slow ticker.
Right, exactly. So this is kind of actually a fun alternative win-con card. Yeah. There are lots of ways, especially now at the point where we play the game, where you can actually actively remove counters from permanents to make that countdown go faster, like a Hex Parasite, for example. Or, if you have a Solemnity in play, you could just play this and win.
No. Solemnity actually does not work on this. I thought the same thing. Because it has to get the counters, and it has to remove the counters to its effect. It's the same kind of way. If you go ahead, you play Solemnity, and then you go ahead and play, what's the land that has the ice counters on it?
Dark Depths, yeah.
Where it's like the card itself has to remove the counter. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Like, it has to have counters put onto it. If there's no counters put onto it, it just doesn't work.
Okay, well, I guess that's one thing you can't use it with, but still, there are plenty of other things that actively remove counters from permanents. Like
I did think that for the longest time, and then someone corrected me, and I was like, oh.
So if you can control your life total, so if you're in white, you're probably gaining a lot of life, hopefully. So if you can actively control the life total so that yours is higher than your opponent's, you could reliably win with this card, I think.
Yeah, and again, if you're in like slow ball in the game, doing something like Pillow 40, where it's like you don't really have a way to win with damage, and you might have lost some sort of key components for like an infinite combo or something, this is something to go ahead and use that. Also, you can blink this in and out to make it so like you get extra time if you need extra time. So it's a very interesting card, and again, you can also proliferate with this to make it so it gets a little longer. So if you're using some Super Friends kind of things, or you care a lot about counters, or blah blah blah.
However, on the bad side, somebody else can proliferate it to stop you from winning. So
which is very interesting. Well, it's a different kind of like arms race, and this is a card that it's always so close to making my builds because it's like I just love the theme of it, but. Very shy.
Yeah, go on to our last one here, Stu.
All right, so at number 10, we have a card that's not even $1 called Dual Nature. It's around 60 cents for an enchantment that costs 6 mana. It costs 4 generic and double green, and it reads, whenever a creature card comes into play, its controller puts a creature token of it into play. That's a copy of that creature. Whenever a creature leaves play, remove all tokens of the same name as that creature card from the game. And when this leaves play, remove all creature tokens. So this is kind of an interesting way of getting like a parallel lives, but it's for all players. So this is, again, a budget parallel lives is a nice card to have. And if players aren't making as scary tokens as you will still get a good value. However, giving all players this effect is scary.
Yeah, however, that said, I am kind of shocked that this is as low on the list as it is, because, I mean, even though it removes the advantage once it goes away, and it does maybe help all players, I mean, if you build your deck to maximize the value of this, you're definitely going to be getting the better end of the
Yeah.
deal. Bramble Sovereign is basically, is a really pricey card, is almost the same thing as this. So, you know, I think that this should probably be, you know, even more, you know, a sought-after card than it is,
Well,
honestly.
yeah, I agree. Because you can also, again, if you know about this, you can make some infinite mana, infinite combos. Like, you can
Yeah.
go, like, having two versions of a card, like, some of them want to interact with each other. And there's other cards like Bio Visionary where it's
Right.
like,
All you have to do is make a few copies of it and you win, so,
yeah.
yeah.
So, is this a good card? And I'd say a sleeper in the money cards? Probably.
I think it is. Yeah, I really do think it is.
Yeah. So that is the final card of our money cards here in this segment. If you're interested in finding some of the cards that we were allowed to talk about and choose and pick out, be sure to check out parts 1 and 2. And you can find all of our stuff online. We're on Reddit, we're on Tapped Out, Facebook, Twitter. Just look up TheCardPool, any social media platform you're on, and you'll probably find us there.
Indeed. And also, we are now affiliated. We have a link with TCG Player right down there at the bottom. So when you go on and shop for these or really any other cards you're looking for, you make sure you use our link after the fact, and you know that shows them that, hey, you support us, you like what we're doing, and they're willing to support us in return.
Yeah, and it's a huge help. Just make sure you click on the link before you hit the checkout button, and that's how we get helped. But until then, I'm Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And we'll see you next time at the Card Pool. That's a solid enchantment.
Yeah, it really isn't too bad, is it?
I might pick up one.